Welcome to the Be Smart podcast. Jared, I think we kind of need to develop a tagline of sort. Do we want to resurrect how not to be an idiot with your money from your radio days?
That was a pretty good tagline. I mean, I came up with that, how not to be an idiot with your money. We can do that. I like that.
Trump week one is officially behind us. We're going to kind of get into some stuff that overlaps in the market headlines, but week one reactions, what do you think?
Here's the incredible thing. Trump is 78 years old. If I did what Trump did in a day, I would be wrecked. I would be physically wrecked. I don't know how that guy gets the energy. I really don't. Like, I'm 50. I'm going to be 51 in like 6 weeks. Man, like if I walk out and get the mail, I need to go to bed. It's like, I do not know where he gets the energy. It's incredible. I mean, obviously he's done a lot. He's signed like 250 executive orders and flown here and flown there, and JD Vance is flying around. Like, he's doing what he said he was going to do.
Let's jump into the market headlines this week. First up, we're going to start with DeepSeek, which is all over the internet today. So from CNBC, how China's new AI model DeepSeek is threatening U.S. dominance. A little-known AI lab out of China, DeepSeek, has ignited panic throughout Silicon Valley after releasing AI models that can outperform America's despite being built more cheaply and with less powerful chips. It unveiled a free open-source large language model in late December that it says only took 2 months and less than $6 million to build using reduced capability chips from Nvidia called H800s. So I've seen DeepSeek has overtaken ChatGPT on the Apple App Store today. What do you make of this recent news in the US's AI position against global competition?
If what they say is true, and first of all, you said they were cheaper chips. They are doing this allegedly at 3% of the hardware costs. 3%. Like, if this is correct, if they're not bullshitting us, this is an extinction level event for Nvidia. Nvidia ceases to exist.
And Nvidia is down about 17% today last I looked.
Yeah. So I was just on the phone with my brother. He owns Nvidia. He bought it at 40. I mean, he's sitting on a mountain of gains. I was like, dude, sell the stock. Sell this. It's not coming back. Sell the stock. It could get back to 40. It could go to zero. Like this OpenAI, which recently did a funding round of 157 billion, it's cut in half overnight. There's going to be 20 VC firms that go out of business. This is carnage. Now, the only way this doesn't happen, Elon Musk on Twitter today was talking about how he thinks they are bullshitting. He thinks that they do have these AI chips, these Nvidia chips, and he thinks they got around the export restriction somehow. So I think he thinks it's crap. But no, if this is real, like if you own Nvidia, oh my God, do not pass go, do not collect $200, sell the stock.
And given the cost of DeepSeek's language model, how insane now does the Stargate project's price tag look? Trump said the project would spend at least $500 billion in building out AI infrastructure and create 100,000 American jobs almost immediately.
Yeah, I mean, that all goes out the window. It's done. It's not going to happen. And that was kind of the weird thing about the AI space race anyway, which was that it seemed like it was a contest to spend more money than everybody else on infrastructure. Like, tech doesn't work that way. Like, tech progresses and things get better and things become obsolete and the cost comes down over time. And that was kind of the weird thing about Nvidia, was that they were able to maintain those margins for so long. Well, that just totally disappeared. So, and look, I don't invest in any of this stuff, right? Like, I don't touch any of this stuff. I shorted Nvidia back in the summer. I covered it. I didn't make any money. Like, I really don't mess around with tech. I'm glad, right? Like, look, in the Daily Dirt Nap and Street Freak portfolios, we have oil companies and fertilizer and all this slow, boring stuff. And this is the reason why I do that, because all it takes is something like this. And you're just Imagine if we had Nvidia in the Street Freak portfolio, people would be freaking out, you know? So I don't invest in things I don't understand, and that's it.
This is a good segue, just talking about tech. From Bloomberg, U.S. yields fall to lowest this year as tech risk fuels haven bid. So treasuries rallied on Monday as investors flocked to the safety of U.S. government bonds after tech firms drove a slump in equity markets. The yield on 10-year U.S. notes fell as much as 12 basis points, the most in almost 2 weeks, to 4.5%, while the policy-sensitive 2-year rate dropped 10 basis points to 4.17%, the lowest in over a month. Haven currencies, including the yen and the Swiss franc, surged. Do you expect this trend to continue? And does this remind you at all of the dot-com unwind in the 2000s regarding these tech valuations?
Yeah, I thought of that a little bit. So I think the move in bonds is a little bit overdone. Like, yes, I can see we might, because people were like, even last week, people were talking about rate hikes. Like, we might get rate hikes this year. That's probably no longer going to happen. But I think the bond move is a little exaggerated. But as far as like the dot-com bubble, it's different because in the dot-com bubble, there wasn't one killer app technology that just broke everything and drove costs to zero. Like, that didn't exist. Like, basically in the dot-com bubble, you had so much overinvestment and malinvestment that it just collapsed under its own weight. So it's two totally different. Like, there wasn't really, when people look back at the dot-com bubble, they say, was there one thing that broke it? And maybe there was. Like, Cisco had an earnings report where their orders were way down, and people say that was kind of the top. But it's not like this. This is different.
Next up, we got to talk tariffs. Trump to hold off on 25% Colombia tariffs, and he reaches deal on migrants. The U.S. President Donald Trump announced sweeping tariffs on Colombia before abruptly pulling the threat after reaching a deal on the return of deported migrants, a move that rattled global markets in the space of hours. Trump's move to quickly threaten tariffs on billions of dollars in trade and oil, cut flowers, coffee, and more served as a stark reminder of his eagerness to use economic tools to achieve geopolitical gains, but his rapid U-turn also illustrated why the president faces questions about his willingness to make good on his threats. How detrimental is this to you, Jared, this weaponization of tariffs to global markets? I mean, I'm seeing now that Trump is also considering similar tariffs on Mexican goods this Saturday, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Trump kind of did this in his first term. Like, he used U.S. economic power as a weapon, which really had never been done before. And, I mean, look, Colombia is a little bit of a special case. The president, this guy, Gustavo Petro, he is a hardcore socialist. Colombia voted this guy in 3 years ago. He's killing Colombia. Like, he's destroying the economy. And it's, I mean, this is not a regime that was going to be friendly to the Trump administration anyway. Colombia, what do we get from Colombia? We get coffee and, flowers, as people say, and soybeans and soybean meal and soybean oil and stuff like that. But it's not a big trading partner with the US. Look, I don't know. I don't really see the point of going, like, starting a trade war over a couple dozen, deported migrants, but it's important to Trump, so I guess he's going to do it.
Let's take it over to the main topic, inflation and the cost of living, especially as it pertains to food prices. So this morning, Bloomberg published an article, Working Americans Turn to Food Banks as Fed Inflation Battle Drags On. Some key points from this. This is a new era of food insecurity, says Emily Engelgard, Vice President of Research at Feeding America. This is not an unemployment issue. As prices have risen, so have the share of Americans reporting they don't have enough to eat. And despite robust economic growth and historically low unemployment, those figures have remained elevated in 2024. The rise in hunger highlights what's at stake with the Fed's moves in the coming months. If it keeps interest rates elevated to push down inflation, it potentially risks a further cooling of the jobs market, including slower wage growth and higher unemployment. If it cuts rates too much in an effort to support hiring and boost workers' paychecks, it risks inflation remaining stubbornly high. How do we tackle these issues of grocery prices They've surged nearly 28% in the past 5 years.
Grocery prices are up more than that. They're up like 50%. 46 is the exact number.
Really?
Yeah. If you do the math on this, the average income, single income in the US is $60,000. The average household income is like 80,000 or something like that. If you have a family of four, you're spending, let's just say $300 a week on groceries. That's 15,000 a year. That's tough to fit in an $80,000 budget, right? Even despite the fact that you're not paying any taxes, food banks usually get used during times of recession, right? Like when people lose as you said, like this is not an unemployment issue. Usually during a recession, people lose their jobs and they end up at food banks. This is not what's going on. This is all about high food costs. And you ask the question, how do you get food prices down? I mean, you can't cap food prices. It has to be a supply side solution. You have to do things that are going to encourage supply, right? And just getting back to the earlier point about Colombia, coffee is something that we get from Colombia. Putting tariffs on coffee is not a great idea. So look, we are early on in the Trump administration. Like everybody who listens to this podcast probably knows that I'm a free trader. I'm very much against tariffs. And I think the result of some of these tariffs is it is going to increase food prices. And it's going to be painful. It's going to be painful. I mean, it doesn't affect people like me. It doesn't. Like I don't feel it at all. If my grocery bill is $50 more, like I don't care. But for some people, that's a really, really big deal. So I would not screw around with tariffs, especially when it comes to food, but that's just me.
Let's go over to the week ahead. Earnings from more than 100 members of the S&P 500, highlighted by results from tech heavyweights Meta, Microsoft, Apple, and Tesla, are set for release, with Wednesday serving as the week's busiest. Plus, on Wednesday afternoon, the Federal Reserve will announce its latest monetary policy decision, with the central bank expected to keep interest rates unchanged and investors focused on what Fed Chair Jay Powell has to say about the balance of 2025. On Thursday, the first estimate of fourth quarter GDP is expected to show the U.S. economy grew at an annualized pace of 2.6% in the final 3 months of 2024, below the 3.1% pace seen in the prior quarter. And Friday will feature a fresh reading of the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, with economists expecting annual core PCE, which excludes the volatile categories of food and energy, to have clocked in at 2.8% in December, unchanged from November. Which of these are you really looking at this week?
I mean, the Fed meeting, obviously. I'm paying attention to the Fed meeting. The Fed is not going to cut rates. They're not going to hike rates. They're going to keep rates unchanged. That's for sure. Really, I mean, like I said with the bond market, like DeepSeek kind of changed everything. I mean, before we were on this path where, stock prices were up, I don't know, 8 to 10% in the last 3 months, and tech was making new high, and it's everything's changed, not to say that DeepSeek is going to tank the US economy. It's not. But at the margin, like there's a wealth effect, if the stock market goes down 20%, which it might because of this, especially with that concentration in the Magnificent Seven. If the stock market goes down 20%, that is going to affect people's consumption habits, So this is day one. The stock market is down 2%, right? We'll have to see if it falls through. But yeah, I mean, if the S&P 500 goes from 6,000 to 5,000, like you will probably, I mean, look, Christopher Waller is already talking about rate cuts next year. Like you'll probably see some chatter about rate cuts pick up.
Well, anything else you want to talk about that's been in the headlines and the news? I mean, there's a ton of stuff right now since Trump took office.
I got one. I'm going to dump all over Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is one of my least favorite people in the world. I think she's terrible. And everybody loves her. The libertarians love her. The conservatives love her because when it comes to foreign policy, she is very non-interventionist, right? And she's been accused of cozying up to Assad and all this stuff. But beside all that, like she has this non-interventionist foreign policy. She doesn't want to start wars, and great. She also is one of the most progressive, or was one of the most progressive members of Congress when it comes to economic issues. Like, she supported Bernie Sanders's free college for everyone, right? She explicitly wanted to strengthen the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. She was against the 2017 tax cuts on the grounds that they fed inequality. She wanted to increase the minimum wage. Economically speaking, she is no friend to libertarians and she is no friend to conservatives. The fact that they're putting in charge of DNI, I mean, look, it's not an economic position. Like, she's not going to have any influence on economics. But look, like, this is something I think that conservatives and libertarians should agree on, is that you don't want somebody with Bernie Sanders like views in your administration. So I dislike Tulsi Gabbard a lot. I don't think she should have a job in the Trump administration. And whenever I bring it up on Twitter, like I tweeted about it last night, like people freak. I think it's because she's hot and like everybody, like all these dudes like her, like I think people get mad at me whenever I bring this up.
That's a perfect way to wrap this episode up. I love it. Everyone, please like, subscribe, drop us a comment or a question in the comments section below, and we will hopefully feature some questions in some upcoming episodes. Jared, thank you for your time. I'll talk to you here soon. Later.
See ya.